Hello guys, today we're back to this, so let's just start.
While sweet lullaby music plays, they weren't old enough to be involved in the war, so they don't comprehend the true horrors of it. So it's no wonder they think it'll be similar this time around. And one of my favourite things about this story is how it explores the differences between traditional war and modern war. At times, it can almost seem as though it's glorifying the old, but this is more the characters in the story than the story itself. And it helps to show how hard it would be for an older couple to come to grips with it all.
I don't even know who the people are these days.
I expect it's all done by committees, dear.
Churchill with his cigar, old Stalin with his moustache. You knew where you stood.
The husband is so knowledgeable about old war poems, leaders and tactics, but now he doesn't even remember who they're fighting sometimes, let alone why.
Who's in charge now then?
And this difference between the old and the new is even more prevalent when the husband picks up the phone and calls their son. But when his son answers, it seems he's not worried at all about the threats, joking around and singing.
What do you mean we'll all go together when we go? It's not funny.
And I think it's a smart choice to only show us the father's side of this call, because it leaves the son's words and actions more open to interpretation. The father thinks his son is being a goof, a silly fellow, but it's much more likely that the son, unlike old Pops, does understand the gravity of their situation. He knows he's going to die, knows they're all going to die, and is having a nervous breakdown. After all, he's a young man, so the chances are he'll either be drafted to go fight, or he's within the radius of where the nuke is likely to hit. But still, the father soldiers on.
No, but it's our duty to carry out governmental instructions in time of war, son.
Talking about duty and country, when in a short while, none of these things will hold any meaning. Both the husband and the wife seem to find comfort in different ways that both kind of stem from denial. James finds comfort in the government advice and the plan, whereas Dux just wants to get on with it, finding normalcy in their usual routine. It's like nothing is different. When she goes outside and blows the dandelions, she begins daydreaming this fantasy fairy tale of dancing butterflies. This isn't the attitude you'd expect from a couple preparing for a nuclear strike. And all this calm and peace they approach the situation with makes the inevitable destruction on the horizon hit so much harder. If they were anxious and panicking the whole time, it'd be a constant reminder and you'd be more prepared for it. As the husband continues to follow the government advice, it begins to contradict itself. On one page saying to take the doors off the house and construct a fort, and then on another recommending to close the same doors to prevent the spread of fire.
Keep doors closed to prevent the spread of fire, it says.
But you've taken off half the doors, James.
And yet this is what the husband is staking their lives on. But I guess, what else are they gonna do? You couldn't just look up the best way to survive a nuke. This guidebook is all they have. And the saddest part is that if the couple hadn't have followed it so exactly, they likely would have been better off, because they own a cellar.
I wonder if we'd have been better off in the cellar.
Oh no, dear, too damp.
The one thing that might save them in an emergency like this, keeping the radiation out and providing enough room to hold their supplies and, more importantly, move around. And in the guidebook's defense, some things should be common sense. According to that article from earlier, the guidebook does say to use a cellar or basement if you have one, but they didn't publish the entire booklet, so I can't find the part which says this. There's a chance they might have been talking about the video guide, which does mention basements, but it specifically says to use a room closest to the center of the house or a basement.
The best place for a fallout room is the basement or ground floor. Whatever room you choose, remember that the further you can get away from radioactive dust in or around your home, the safer you will be.
So even if they had seen this, I can understand why they went with the room they went with. And just looking at the refuge, you know it's not sufficient. It's exposed on one side. And this, again, is actually not the fault of the guidebook because it says to cover both ends, which the husband doesn't do.
Across the two open ends of your refuge, you should make thick walls of bags and boxes of earth or sand.
So the way it works is you have a designated room which is as close to the middle of the house as possible, and then inside this room is this little fort.
Your fallout room will protect you, but you will make it even safer by strengthening a small part of it. This part will be your inner refuge during the worst of the attack.
And I love the framing change as soon as they step inside the tiny and claustrophobic space. The pair are cut off on all sides, taking up the entire screen with no room to stretch out. It's hardly the place you want to spend 2 weeks, which was one of the main criticisms brought up in that article from earlier. As the couple finish up their preparations, the husband prances around the living room, acting out exactly how he thinks the war is gonna go.
Innumerate Russian hordes will sweep across the plains of Central Europe. One man, one vote. And women too nowadays, of course.
Progressive king. And whilst there are ups and downs, back and forths, ultimately, he has complete faith it'll end well for them. And it tells you a lot about his idea of war. It's all strategy, calculated decisions, battles for territory. But a nuclear bomb involves none of these things. There are no territory battles because afterwards, there's no territory left. But none of this seems to have settled in. The whole time they're planning out what they'll do if a bomb does come, it sounds like they're planning a picnic, sipping down tea whilst reading off a massive list of items they need. But despite it not being on the list, the husband remembers something about paper bags. He believes they need them, but he can't remember what for.
He's the dude I really want to get my hands on. Will I get lucky? Hell, probably not. I would love to walk away with one Silas. With one Silas, that would be amazing. All right, let's keep it going. A few chances here.
I wonder if it's true about the paper bags. Or is it a joke?
His best guess is to deflect the heat, an extra layer of protection against the blast. But more on this later on, because finally it happens. The radio announces that an enemy missile strike has been launched on the country and they have just 3 minutes until impact. And the husband really took me off guard here.
Come back, you stupid bitch, and get in the shelter!
Keep in mind, up until this point, he's been so passive and calm, and I gotta be honest, I let out a cheeky chuckle. But this outburst is really the moment it turns from this ideal fairy tale countryside couple to the more serious tone throughout the rest of the film. And the last words before impact are,
The cake will be burned!
It's so ironic because, well, everything's about to burn. People, trees, livestock, half the country is about to be set ablaze, and still the cake is all that matters. It shows how personal this story is. Most nuclear disaster movies focus on the chaos, the survival, the panic, the incomprehensible scale of destruction. But when the wind blows is small scale, and so the metaphor of the cake is so much more fitting. As the radio gives off more advice that ultimately won't make much difference, the couple fall silent, and we get some calm, still shots of the peaceful home and countryside. One last little glimpse of what's about to be lost. And this is probably my favourite sequence in the film. The way they show the impact of the nuke is so well done. A quick white flash before an overwhelming cloud of pure black approaches on the horizon. And with each second that passes, the colour is drained from the landscape, from green to black and white to sepia until the screen looks muddy and stained. The animation is sketched in a hurry with little consistency. It's chaotic and full of energy. You can almost feel the heat in the air of this sequence, and the sound design is incredible. It sounds like an aircraft flying overhead looped over and over whilst drums bang rapidly. It's all so overwhelming, and that line, "the cake will be burned," plays again, but now it's distorted. Even the audio is falling apart. And then the shockwave reaches our cute little couple. And this is where the house being a real model didn't just look interesting, but helped to elevate the story. It feels like you can reach out and grab everything in their home, like you can step foot in it. So the devastation of the shockwave has so much more impact because you can see every single detail in the destruction. Because of the heat, all the colour is now gone. It's so far from how it looked in the beginning. They've had all these years together, even surviving through the war as children, going on to have a happy life, only for it all to be taken away in just 3 minutes. Now, the blast in the book plays out a bit differently. For one, he doesn't call his wife a bitch.
You stupid bitch, and get in the shelter!
He calls her a fool. And the last haunting line of "the cake will be burnt" is the same, but instead of focusing on the destruction of the town,
No, I say bye bye bye.